It's red. Is it supposed to be red? Yeah, it is. It's on. I'm going to be back and talk about this man of lawlessness, and I promise you this is going to be the last week that we'll talk about this, and we'll move on to the latter part of 2 Thessalonians next week. The truth is, I don't know that anybody knows for certain who the man of lawlessness is. I looked at one commentary, and it said that the Roman emperor was the man of lawlessness because he claimed deity and he wanted the people of Rome and the Roman Empire were supposed to worship the Caesars. Caesar was to be as their god. And then it also added, the same commentary, added that it could be the Pope, the papacy, because from the Reformation on, they thought that it was the Pope. The reformers thought the Pope was the Antichrist because he wreaked such havoc among the saints and was so domineering and so demanding, and that's what they were trying to get away from when they started the Reformation movement. So they blamed the Pope. Second commentary that I looked at said it didn't speculate as to who it was, but it simply says that it's difficult to say who this man of lawlessness is. And that was pretty much what they said, except they said many suggestions have been made. And then it added the note that he's described by Paul here as the son of perdition, which is the same description that Jesus gave to Judas Iscariot when he was praying in the 17th chapter of the Gospel of John, and he was telling the Father that he had kept all that he had been given, save the son of perdition, who had gone to his own reward. Third commentary I looked at said that this Antichrist, this man of lawlessness, will be a political figure, a peaceful political leader who unites the world, the 10 nations of Europe specifically, and he gets that from the book of Daniel, where Daniel talks about the 10 horns that follow after the Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. He says, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the wrongdoing, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for guilt, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So you are to know and understand that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks, 62 weeks, 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with streets and moats, and even in times of distress. Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined, and he will confirm a covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice, grain offerings, and to the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolation, until the complete destruction, one that is decreed, gushes forth on the one who makes desolate. So people, they're just all over the place with who this is. The problem is, Paul says this one will take his seat in the temple of God. In other words, he's going to be a part of the church. He's not necessarily political. I think it's a religious figure. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I've got a cough drop in my mouth, but it seems to be making things worse rather than better. I looked at a couple of study Bibles, and they're all over the place too in trying to explain their particular understanding. Most of the study Bibles had a leaning toward the rapture of the church out of the world before the Antichrist. But that's not in agreement with what Paul says in 2 Thessalonians, because he says that the man of lawlessness will come before the church taken out, and that everybody will that he's telling them that the rapture has not already taken place, and they've missed it because the man of lawlessness has not yet come. going to do two things today that I have tried not to do most of my ministry. I'm going to ultimately tell you more than I know. That's hard to do. But I've tried to make it a practice in all of my preaching not to be critical of other church groups. I don't agree with a lot of other church groups doctrinally, but I think to me, it's more beneficial for me to just preach what I believe rather than telling you what they don't believe that I agree with, or what they believe that I disagree with. But I'm going to break that a little bit today. I think history will support most of what I'm saying to some extent. I had the book of Daniel open and closed it. In the book of Daniel, 7th chapter, 25th verse. He's talking about these kingdoms. This is the vision that Daniel had. Vision of the four beasts, the Ancient of Days reign, and the Son of Man presented. He sees all of this in a vision. Verse 15, he says, as for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the visions in my mind kept alarming me. He couldn't understand what these visions were about. And so then these angels, or these beings, come to him and explain the visions. Verse 23 says, this is what he said. The fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and trample it down and crush it. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous one, and will humble 3 kings. And he will speak against the Most High, and wear down the saints of the Highest One. And he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be handed over to him for a time, times, and a half time. But the court will convene for judgment, and his dominion taken away, annihilated, and destroyed forever. Now, these kingdoms that he sees are historical. 70 weeks is given as the time for this to take place. Pretty much understood that the kingdoms were Babylon and my mind's gone blank. Babylonian kingdom and Cyrus, Medes and the Persians, and then the fourth kingdom is Rome, and the Roman kingdom is the final fourth kingdom. That's the most powerful of the whole lot of them, and he acts, and the army of the Rome literally rules the world. Now, the 70 weeks is taken as 490 days. That's seven days a week, for 70 weeks, 490 days. And then they apply a principle of one day in prophecy equals a year. And that's scriptural as well. In Ezekiel, the 4th chapter, Ezekiel is told to lay on his side for so many days, and that each day that he lays on his side is a year for Israel. And then he's told to lay on the other side, and this is for the sins of Judah. And he lays there a number of days, and it's one day for each of the years of the sins of Judah. That's not the only place where one day is taken as a year. Back in the book of Numbers, when the spies were sent in to view the promised land, they were in the promised land spying it out 40 days. When they came back and they gave a bad report, 10 of the 12 gave a bad report, and they couldn't go in. They just said, we can't go in, and God, in his sovereignty, said, all right, none of you will go in except Caleb and Joshua. You know how long they wandered in the wilderness? 40 years. 1 year each day, spies in the land. So 1 day equals 1 year. Daniel's 70 weeks, 490 years. It starts, the book of Daniel says, with the rebuilding of Jerusalem until the time of Messiah. And it was precisely 490 years. Jerusalem, when Cyrus issued the decree, they could rebuild Jerusalem. 490 years exactly till the Messiah came. Let me read things. This book by Steve Walber. On page 96, talking about weeks. Protestant scholars from the 1500s to 1800s not only applied the day for a year principle to the prophecy of Daniel, time of Jesus Christ, but also to the 3.5 years of Daniel 7:25 to the time of Antichrist. and they applied it to papal Rome. They interpreted the 3.5 years, 42 months, or 1,000 of papal Rome. Fleming showed, as others had done for many centuries, that the 1,260 days were 1,260 years. Now, when did the 1,260 years begin? In 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, Paul says that the beginning of the Antichrist would be when the repressor was removed. If the repressor was the Roman Empire, Rome fell in 476 AD. Caesar Restrainer was taken out of the way. So you would expect the 1,260-year period to begin shortly after 476 AD. There was an emperor that remained named Justinian, and he decreed that the Bishop of Rome should be the head of all the churches in the Western Europe. When the Roman Empire collapsed in 476 AD, there were still these rulers in the East. Justinian was one of them, and he believed that the key to keeping peace in Europe was to unite all the religions under the leadership of the Roman Church. So he issued this famous decree that made the Pope the legal head of all the holy churches. This was in 538 AD, a little over 50 years after the fall of Rome. Pope came into being. Daniel predicted that during the 1,260-year period, the little horn would persecute the saints of the Most High. Wahlberg says that's a prophecy that was fulfilled to the letter by papal Rome during the Dark Ages. That's why so many men in the Reformation rose up and started this rebellion against the Roman Church, because they were tired of being persecuted. 1,260 years would take us from 538 to the year 1798. That's the time of the French Revolution. In the midst of the French Revolution, Rome was captured and Pope Pius VI was taken captive. Pope Pius VI and VII were taken captive to Rome, and Napoleon declared that there would be no successor appointed to the Pope. So the papacy was extinct. There was not a vestige of existence remained, and among all the Roman Catholic powers, not a finger was stirred in its defense. The eternal city had no longer prince or pontiff. Its bishop was dying captive in foreign lands, and the decree was already announced that no successor would be allowed in place. And this 1798 was the exact end, 1,260-year reign little horn that was predicted Daniel. Historical. Now, I know Pope is still on the throne. Let me read something to you from the Bible. Good to read from the Bible when you're doing things like this. 13th chapter, book of Revelation. We looked at this very briefly when we went through Revelation. And the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horn were 10 crowns, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. I saw one of his heads as if it had been fatally wounded, and his fatal wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. Wahlberg, book that I've been getting this from, says that the fatal wounding of one of the heads happened in 1798 when the Pope was taken captive by France in the French Revolution, because the papacy was done away with. It was a fatal wound. And then down through the years, primarily when John Paul was the Pope started rising in power and world recognition again, to the point that it is at this present day. Like I said, I'm telling you more than I know. I don't know, but it makes sense to me that this could really be a possibility. But then, you know, I've never spent a whole lot of time preaching Bible prophecy. I think you have to be more scholarly than I am. I think you have to be more scholarly than I want to be. And I think you have to make a lot of guesses sometimes. I'd rather deal with facts, what the Bible says, what I believe. Fact. I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out who the man of lawlessness, Antichrist, is. I think we need to spend our time making hearts fight. Are I don't know, I don't know, time. I don't think it's wasted. Paul was writing about Thessalonians. There won't be calling, waking, a rapture of the church till after the man of lawlessness. May have to live through terrible times. Hearts, God. Father, well on learning to strengthen us. We're going to sing closing hymn